Welcome back, everyone. We have got so much to talk about today. Look, it's not going to surprise you that the games industry is on fire, but honestly, today's video is just a little bit ridiculous. So let's go through what's going on. Developers are striking against brutal mismanagement over in France because Spiders and Kiloton are taking on the perennial games industry villain Nacon. Man, Nacon blow. And hey, Nacon are also the people that published Lord of the Rings Gollum. Then layoffs are hitting Rocksteady because Suicide Squad did not hit sales expectations. Over at NetEase, they're basically speedrunning the entire process because most of the team behind Visions of Mana were actually gone before the game even released, all because NetEase appear to be changing up their strategy. And finally, it would not be a video about mismanagement unless we talked about our good friends over at Activision, and that's because Raven Software's QA union, well, they certainly think things aren't going well, and they're filing complaints against both Activision and Microsoft. So let's kick it off with Spiders and Kiloton versus Nacon. That's a bunch of names you may not know, but Greedfall, I think you may know. So Greedfall 2 is launching this month, and well, it's not really looking great because the devs at Spiders have been on strike since Monday. Now, this all began with an open letter being distributed this week by a French labor union, and to save all of my French audience members, don't worry, I'll just abbreviate it to STJV. So it was signed by 43 out of the 95 staff of Spiders. That's basically like half the company, right? And it's basically detailing a bunch of complaints, and I'll summarize them as low wages, mismanagement, and unsupported scaling of production. That's basically because they're around 90 people and they're expected to do 2 games. They've also had increased turnover, no transparency from management and planning, failures to protect or hire women, and all this stuff they say is negatively impacting the development of Greedfall 2. To do a quote, I mean, this is rough. Quote, "The production is underwater, accumulating burnout and other psychosocial risk factors, and the workers fear they won't be able to be proud of their work when the game is released. Many people have left Spiders during the production, and others have no intention of staying after the game's release." So that's fairly brutal. Also, that's not really going to inspire people to pick up the early access version of Greedfall 2, is it? So, in short, management of the studio seem to have very little faith from their staff. And again, do remember, this is a studio that's wholly owned by Nacon, and that is, of course, the very same Nacon that will never escape the Lord of the Rings Gollum. Now, with Greedfall 2, this is all pretty damn relevant because the game's launching in early access. It's weird because it's early access, it's got an entirely new combat model, and of course, with it being early access, I mean, that's an entire development structure that is different. It means that the work's only halfway done. Like, the game ain't finished. It doesn't sound like what they would ideally do, because ideally, you know, you do release your game when it's done. So I'm personally worried that the production's been a total shit show. The staff certainly seem to think it's a shit show, to the degree where they've maybe had to cut a whole bunch of expectations for release and do early access, perhaps instead of doing, like, ideally a launch, which is probably what they would want to do. So essentially, staff have got no hope that things will get better in the short, medium, or long term. And they then say that the whole situation is made worse by basically the complete ignorance of staff's request for mediation here, and then an unwillingness to actually make changes whenever the discussions did happen. Of course, rather shockingly, the leadership of Spiders do not agree, so they sent this statement to Insider Gaming. "The false and even defamatory accusations made by the union in no way reflect the reality of the day-to-day working life of the company's employees and are an attack on the reputation of the studio, whose teams are fully mobilized to produce quality games and enthusiastically ensure the early access release of Greedfall 2. So that's a firm denial. That being said, I mean, enthusiastically ensure the early access release. Enthusiastically. I'm pretty sure that going on strike is not that. I mean, you could say that them going on strike does show that they have enthusiasm in getting the game out, that they actually care, and that's why they're going on strike, rather than just checking out internally, shipping stuff they're not proud of, and then leaving as soon as they can. Generally, right, they're going to take the risk of going on strike because they actually do want to make the situation better. They probably do want to deliver a great game for their players. So a firm denial coming here from the studio, but what's taking this beyond just a simple dispute with that studio's leadership is that the problems are kind of beyond the studio. It seems the problems are actually with the corporate owner Nacon, or at least are an addition to problems at Nacon, and that's because of Test Drive Unlimited. You might remember Test Drive Unlimited, released ages ago. I remember playing a hell of a lot of that as a kid. So it's being developed by a company called Kiloton, and they're also a subsidiary under Nacon, and they've actually joined the strike. And with Kiloton staff, it seems to be a similar story where they've been making demands for a while, but they've basically been told that they can't, don't make demands, don't talk, don't do anything, you'll upset the rest of the group. That has backfired. Here's a quote: "If no improvement in our working conditions is offered because it would drive other studios within the group to ask for the same, it stands to reason that we make those demands together." So for Nacon, they have basically let these problems bubble to the point where the studios are joining each other in a strike. And this is with 2 games that are coming out this month. And, as I'm sure you may be aware, whenever a game comes out, often quite a lot of work needs to be done. Now, Nacon have got a history of pissing everybody off, like developers, players, everyone. As an example, do you remember the whole story with Frogwares over the sinking city? There's stuff with Paranoia, Happiness is Mandatory being pulled from sale because the IP holders DMCA'd it over quality, and then with the release of Blood Bowl 3. Basically, its release was a shit show, and its monetization is a shit show. And that really sucks, because Blood Bowl, while it's not the biggest thing in the universe, it does have its niche of fans, and they deserve to not have lots of bullshit. So the common theme in all of these is Nacon, and that basically means that yes, now there are 2 games coming out this month, and both are from teams that are striking. So I'm sure that will go well for them. Now, a quick pause. This isn't a sponsor. Here's the deal. I want to build something here that is bigger than myself and that is not tied to the bloody algorithm, and that is why Bellular.games exists. It's our site, it's not Patreon, it's our site, and over there one of the things that we do is loading screen. It's our daily newsletter, and honestly, it's goddamn class. The guys work really hard to make it the best thing that it can be. And over there, you basically get coverage that you can trust. It keeps you in the loop of what's actually coming out, what's actually happening in gaming, and over there, in addition to loading screen, you also get access to all of our reports and our research early, often before I even I'm doing seeing the stuff for videos, so you get that before I even do, and you also get our videos ad-free and often early, as well as our members community over in Discord, which is just a lovely place to hang out. I want to build something that lasts, that can be your companion in gaming, and look, your support means the world to me and the team. So that's I suppose that's the pitch. That's what's going on. With that said, it's time to talk about Warner Brothers and Rocksteady. So, back in June, there were reports that Warner Brothers had no plans to close Rocksteady, which certainly is a good thing, and apparently they were making use of them in a director's cut of Hogwarts Legacy. So it seems to me that they didn't really have an immediate next thing for some of their staff to do. I don't know, maybe they pared back some expectations for what the live service dev would be for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. So maybe because of that, they put people on the Hogwarts director's cut. Now, 2 months later, and just in time for the Q3 earnings report to be compiled, well, Rocksteady are holding to that. They're not closing the studio, but they are laying off staff. This was captured by Eurogamer. So, poor sales of Suicide Squad have led to the studio's QA department being reduced from 33 to 15, with other staff at all levels of seniority being impacted across the company, and at least one individual was let go in the middle of their paternity leave. That's pretty rough, and to read a quote, Rocksteady staff, who requested to remain anonymous, told Eurogamer that the loss of so many roles in the QA department, including team members with specialized knowledge, would leave the remaining colleagues shouldered with more work, and there has been an acknowledgement by the senior staff that product quality would now suffer as a result. So that's cool. Now, the thing with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is per Circana's tracking, it's actually the 14th best-selling game in 2024. That means that it actually sold better than P3 Persona 3 Reload, it sold better than Stellar Blade even, and other titles that have been seen as commercial successes. So it's not that Suicide Squad sold badly, because it didn't sell badly in a sort of absolute sense. What it did, though, is sold badly as compared to their expectations, and likely as compared to the amount of money that they poured into that game for years and years and years and years. This is a game that was thought by Warner Bros. And Rocksteady to basically be big bucks, Helldivers money. Maybe they thought that this could end up being a Destiny-like live service cash cow for the next decade, but of course, they were wrong. They were wrong in that big bet. They released a game that was out of date by the time of its launch, that had so many, I think, incorrect assumptions built into its design and development and just the whole plan, that now Rocksteady have had to be cut, and that means they've lost a wealth of experience that could be used to either help to try to salvage that game, or, make the next thing something that is worthy of Rocksteady's lineage. pretty rough. And I guess speaking of lineage, one of the things that NetEase were doing was trying to get veteran Japanese devs and basically forming companies as a part of just their overall strategy to put games out. For a long time, it seemed that the likes of NetEase were just trying to spread their wings more like outside of China. And it really seemed to a lot of people that they sort of saw regulation coming on the horizon and they thought, look, we should be global in our investments so that even if things domestically go a little bit bad, we'll be okay and we'll be able to make a lot of profit elsewhere. Now, Visions of Mana is a result of that whole thing. It released to an 85% positive rating in Steam, 77 on OpenCritic, so is it setting the world alight? No, but it's absolutely a good game, and it came from a team that was set up by NetEase in 2020 with the whole purpose being to take veteran Japanese talent and put them to work. It was a good first effort, and it's also their last effort, because per Bloomberg, Uka Studios were gutted of almost all staff, and that's ahead of a full closure. And this seemingly happened before the game even launched, so the game isn't even out yet. The team's been gutted, and the news broke a day after the launch of the game, which certainly, I mean, look, Visions of Mana is still there. You can buy it, you can play it, it is a good game, but I think for a lot of people, you know, if the studios died, like, as the games came out, I think people will be less likely to pick up a game. The thing is, though, this is seemingly not about that game or that studio. It rather seems to be NetEase restructuring their Japanese plans, because initially it seemed they wanted to do big premium efforts, I guess tap into some of that Square-like energy. But 4 years in, it basically just seems the juice isn't really worth the squeeze there. They're changing tack, changing strategy. And I guess if you're NetEase and you're pouring so much money into Japan, it must feel a bit strange when, say, Black Myth Wukong comes out and does absolutely amazingly. Now, it seems that about 25% of that game's sales have been outside of China, and it's sold well outside of China. It's obviously sold incredibly well in China, and it's also proved something. It's proved that the games industry in China has matured to the point where people can leave the big companies, form a studio, and then make a proper, like, AAA blockbuster game. That's exactly what Black Myth Wukong was able to do. So it could be the case that NetEase have kind of realized, hang on a second, some of our fears of regulation, or maybe, maybe things aren't going to go in that bad way. We've just seen Black Myth Wukong. Why not form some of these studios at home? I mean, as an example, Game Science, who are the developer behind Black Myth Wukong, of course, Black Myth is like the overall series, so there's going to be more Black Myth games, and this definitely means that I suppose that the Black Myth franchise is off to an absolute, like, you could not think of a more stellar start for a franchise. Well, that was a bunch of people that were working on a Journey to the West MMO for Tencent. They left Tencent, and oh look, they've had an absolutely humongous success. And funnily enough, a success that Tencent themselves then decided to invest in. So I guess seeing that, NetEase are probably thinking, hang on a second, we should do some of that. We've actually paid for and cultivated loads of talent at home. Maybe they've realized that they just don't have to be making the sorts of games that they were making. So that might explain the strategy, but obviously if you were on the Visions of Mana development team, yeah, that's not really going to be any form of, thing to make you feel good about what happened. The next and final story for today's video, then, is Activision, Microsoft, and Raven Software. Basically, the staff at the Raven Software QA union are saying that Activision and Microsoft just are not taking them seriously. Now, to get you up to speed in the story, basically, Raven QA voted to unionize in May of 2022. This was the first but smallest of the Activision unions, and of course, that then, what followed that is way more unions. As an example, there is the ZeniMax union, and it just so happened, right? Just so happened, correlation, causation, whatever, but whenever the Bethesda layoffs happened, well, people that were in the ZeniMax union did not get cut. More recently, we saw the World of Warcraft development team, like the whole thing, unionized. Now, that's interesting to me, because the War Within has ended up being, honestly, kind of a banger. I mean, just the quality of writing and stuff, it is absolutely, humongous improvement over Dragonflight, and the game is basically unrecognizable as compared to Shadowlands. And I guess that means that is a union, it's a full team union. They are in a bloody strong position, because they're saying, hey, we're kind of doing one of your biggest games, one of the biggest games. You better treat us right, because guess what? We have your bottom line by the balls. And that's where it would have been great if I could have said Bobby, but of course Bobby's gone. Anyway, in this case, with this union, basically they're still trying to get things going, and they're basically alleging that Microsoft and Activision have engaged in bad faith bargaining and concerted activities, the latter of which, those concerted activities, are including, they say, retaliation, discharge, and discipline. Now, the details of those have not really been revealed, but staff in the collective bargaining group basically feel they've been treated unfairly because of their membership in that group. Now, I will say I do not have an in-depth understanding of employment law in that jurisdiction. As an example, like, you know, over here, like Northern Ireland, UK, union organization is a protected category. I'm pretty sure it is in parts of America or certain states, but again, that's, you know, that's not really my speciality. Now, the thing that may seem odd to you here is you may remember the story that Microsoft voluntarily, publicly agreed with the Communication Workers of America union that they would be neutral to unionization efforts. But in reality, that mostly applies to letting staff join a union in the first place. It does not mean that Microsoft and their subsidiaries have got to actually give staff the terms that the staff would expect. But what it does mean is that they do have to play fair in the negotiations. Those negotiations don't seem to be going anywhere fast. That being said, take a look at the World of Warcraft development team. I've got to wonder, you know, the WoW dev team has, I mean, as I said, it's got them by the balls. That's the whole dev team. Billions of dollars. If you are a small QA union, I think it's going to be harder because you don't have as strong of a position to argue from. So we'll have to see, but I suppose it's not like people in the Raven Software union are not used to waiting already, because they have been waiting since May of 2022. So let me know, what are your perspectives on these stories? Check out yesterday's video, and of course, to get way more content and support the team behind these videos, check out Bellular.games. Have a great day. I'll see you over there.